So at the beginning of a landscape painting, or any painting for that matter, you really want to start by doing a little drawing, even if it's a fast painting, like the one I'm doing here today. So first I sketched in some of the different major shapes, the foreground, the background shapes, just kind of put things in position and trying to get a feel of the space right away before I ever start putting down more paint. When I'm landscape painting, I like to make notes of the highest end of the value range and the lowest. So you'll notice that first I had put in those dark shapes, just kind of reminding myself of where the low end of my value scale is, and also I marked in the sky and the water, which were accounting for the high end. I like working from the background into the foreground in a landscape painting as well. Somehow it seems helpful for me. The background generally seems to be more consistent visually for me, so I find it's a good place to start. Doesn't seem to change as much throughout the process of the painting, whereas the foreground, there's lots of detail things that as the light comes up, they're shifting pretty dramatically, because I was working on this painting for several hours. So I established the background first, and there tends to be a lot of blues in the background of a landscape painting. Might be a little hard to see in the video, but everything's sort of muted down with these blues and violets, because when we're looking at something that's far away, we're seeing it through this filter or lens of atmosphere. It's water in the air that has like a bluish hue to it, so we tend to see things further away as a little more blue-violet color. And you can see now I've started to mark in more of the foreground, sort of solidifying the drawing. It's important to remember that we're never stopping the drawing process while we're making a painting like this. It's just something that we continually need to be improving on. And so with every brush stroke, I'm really trying to adjust the drawing and shore things up a little bit. It's fun, but in the background there I was dropping in colors, but as you keep painting, the painting sort of reveals itself to you. So there were colors and shapes and things that I didn't see when I was first painting the background that only become more visible as you spend more time with the landscape, or the same if you're portrait painting. The more time you spend, the deeper you can observe, and your subject just kind of slowly and continually reveals itself. This is kind of a fun part of the painting. As I started to develop the foreground here, there's this really awesome shape in the water. I kind of marked it in with those greens in the water there, but it was being caused by the reflection of those trees being cast out onto the river there. And then I saw it on the left-hand side there as well, and started putting in some of those shapes. Really starts to make it feel like water right away when it's being causing that reflection from the trees. So you can see I put in this stick in the foreground, didn't like it, and erased it out. It's always okay to make changes, and you'll see in a second I started to paint it back in. The first time it just didn't feel right to me, but I felt like it was an important compositional element, and so I wanted to include it. And you can see it in the video up there on the left-hand side of the river. And there's no trick for painting these sorts of things. A landscape, or even adding in that stick, was a difficult element. The only thing we can do is just carefully observe, try to make careful drawing marks, and be thoughtful with how we're painting. But this isn't a formula for creating the way that I'm showing you here, and there's no trick to it. It's as simple as observing and engaging the landscape, and just trying to articulate your experience of it. You can see in the foreground there also I had put some really light tonalities up around the bank there, and it really set the foreground off. And I only did that because that's what I was seeing there, but I remember that being a moment where it really started to help the painting feel more dimensional. Still just solidifying all these shapes. Those water shapes, I've been seeing those reflections, but in a painting you never just put something down and you hit it perfect the first time. It's always a growing process. And so don't be discouraged if you put something down and you look back and it looks wrong and the shapes aren't right. That's just part of it. The goal isn't to get it right when we're painting. The goal is to keep seeing where we've made mistakes or where we could improve our drawing or color, and all those little mistakes are actually gifts. And if we'll look at them like that, we won't get frustrated. Notice everything that I'm painting right now, I've already painted at one point or another. I'm just going in and fine-tuning and adjusting and realizing where I'd maybe made something too dark or too light, or the drawing wasn't accurate. And every time I find one of those places, I really view it as a gift, because I'm going to get to improve the painting. I spent a lot of time in those reflections in the water too. Felt like it was important that they really represented the trees. And you notice I try to be kind of patient in terms of working into the foreground. I've developed things quite a bit before I really get into some of this foreground, because these trees are so fun to paint, and I knew I'd have fun with it, so I wanted to leave those till a little later, and so I didn't end up neglecting other drawing issues or things in the process. I skipped ahead a little bit there. It took me quite a bit of time to develop some of those shapes, and it's fun when you're painting the trunks of trees. They kind of appear and disappear through the foliage, and you'll be able to see a photo at the end, and you could pause it and look a little longer, but these little trunks and shapes that I'm painting in right now as I'm speaking, they're really, you just have to observe them closely, but they're really just coming in and out of between the foliage, and just paint them like that. However you see it is the best way to paint it, I think. Right now I'm putting in, there's parts of the sky that were showing through the leaves too, and this was fun. In the front you just saw me make a little mark in white, and actually what I did was I scraped away a little bit with the back of the brush. There were some white twigs in the front, and again in the photo you can see them more clearly, but I kind of scraped them away, and instead of adding white paint, I just removed down to the beginning surface a little bit. So I waited till the end. A lot of times we want to put in highlights right away, but that is something that if we start putting in highlights too soon, we don't want to change those sorts of things, and they can really make it difficult when you're mixing into them. They'll mess up your paint mixture. So I really waited till later before I started putting in any highlights. Like I said at the very beginning, it's best, I think, to paint from dark to light. At least that's what my teacher Tony has talked about, and I've discovered it to be true as well. So I painted quite a bit, getting the darker values established, and then slowly start bringing up the lights. And so at this stage of the painting, I'm really trying to, again, adjusting there for some of the darks. the darker values, because they do support the lights. And so I'm really trying to solidify the value range, put in my darkest darks and my lightest lights. And I'm also continually, at this point, even adjusting drawing things. I think the more we focus on the drawing and think about it and address it in the paintings, that's where paintings really start to feel solid, and we're more clearly articulating our experience of what we're seeing. And a lot of people think painting is all about, expression and color, and it is about those things, but we can't neglect drawing in the painting process. So still just solidifying, like that foreground tree. You saw me working on that, putting in some more darks and changing the shape of it a little bit, but those foreground elements have to be really carefully drawn. Even you can see I put a few leaves on the bank there in the painting, and when I painted those, I really carefully made little brush marks and tried to make sure that they were accurate, and because the things in the foreground, it will really render things in the foreground and let things in the background have looser edges. It'll give more of a sense and feeling of space and spaciousness in our paintings. Just adjusting a few more little drawing things, and you'll see me, after I get these drawing things finished, I'm going to sign it in the lower right hand corner. I always try to keep my signature kind of hidden, not a distraction in a painting. And here's the final piece after several hours.